Hey you guys, this is Tired Goth, and I am doing another Threat Intel 102 series. So I touched upon some topics and intuitive reasoning in one of my previous videos, and I'd like to delve a bit further into tangible and intangible attacks. So this is going to cover some of the topics that I'm introducing in my scope of research, my scope of application of my research to kind of bridge two worlds together. So, with intuitive reasoning, you basically have sort of like a connection between the vessel, which is your body, how it does things, its proxies and extensions, like, the tech that you use, the attitudes that you hold, anything really. And then you also thusly have your spirit, which is in your vessel, right? So what is a spirit, right? If people think like, oh, are we talking about ghosts here? Well, your spirit is actually your ambition, your way of handling things, your approach to things, your ability to either be disparaged or to continue, right? This is your spirit. It is something that drives you. It's your inspiration at the bottom of it, really. So when you have a healthy spirit, you have a good sense of yourself. Some people would refer to you as a person who has a good head on their shoulders. What it means is that your vessel doesn't guide you. Your spirit, your ambitions, and your attempts to connect with humanity guide your body, right? Now, I'm touching upon here this very tangible side of what we're about to discuss because it gets a little weird from here. uh, I'll explain, what I mean about this. So, for example, if we are talking about tangible and intangible impacts on a person's ability to do what it is that they intend to do what it is that they intend to do, manifest for themselves the type of life that they want, create the type of good exposure of information that they require to help others along, right? Whether they're a guide, a teacher, um, someone who has good and veritable influence, I guess you could say, over the public. It could be public speaking. It could literally be taking the role of an influencer, someone who has impact on the public and their opinions, right? It doesn't have to be political. It's more so, whatever information is being provided is something that is then being used for entertainment purposes. Like this person could provide information to someone or a group, and then this group will digest that information and say, hey, this works, or hey, this makes sense, or if it doesn't, then it doesn't, right? So having that type of influence, though, is a very powerful thing to have, and a lot of people misuse it to garner attention so that energy is exchanged, but it doesn't really have any type of necessary outcome. For example, like, there are people who have so much influence that they can literally guide someone away from paying attention to someone at all. And whether or not they misuse that power and their ability could make or break one's ability to deliver impactful messages, right? This isn't the problem, though. The problem is it being misused. It's not bad to have influence, but it is bad to misuse your influence to guide people the wrong way, for example. You have to have a very good sense of yourself, your ambitions, and what it is that you would actually have, not only for yourself, but for others, in a level of equality that does not disparage anyone for making their own choices. Here's where we talk about why the dignity of risk in choices impacts tangible and intangible things, or vice versa, how intangible impacts can actually change a person's ability to make decisions for themselves and possibly destroy things from there. So when we are dealing with someone who has an intangible effect on someone, be it through their skill sets in technology, their skill sets in their ability to manifest things through their words, their influence. For example, their ability to create things that sway opinions toward their side of a story that perhaps isn't being spoken so clearly through art, for example, a lot of self-expression. A lot of artists and entertainers will tell their side of the story through their art, and people will immediately side with them because they're very charmed by the art, not realizing that this art could have been made at someone's expense, right? There is a subject somewhere in there that isn't being perhaps unveiled for who they really are. And we don't know how much that particular subject could have suffered during the making of that art, for example. That's an intangible impact that we don't realize has very tangible impacts on the person on the receiving end of it, whether or not it's made public that it does. So this is another thing that I'd like to discuss with you, whether or not this is appropriately and positively measured as an impact at all. Because if you have someone with malicious intentions handling this kind of power to influence people's opinions without realizing that those opinions are being swayed in the favor of someone who is doing wrong when they offer them, like, hey, wow, that was a great piece. Hey, wow, I didn't know that was true. Hey, wow, thanks for bringing me this information, not realizing that they're helping a culprit. We have a very interesting threat model here. We have someone who is able to sway the opinions of others, the attention of others, and if you paid attention to some of the things that I said in my other videos, where attention becomes an energy option for exchange, especially in witchcraft, right? Yes, we went there. You have a person who is highly spiritually influential. Whether or not the person on the receiving end of that spiritual prowess is being publicly shown as having been hurt very badly by it. Now, there are, somewhat intangible battles going on all the time, good and evil, and, the purported perspective of what is good or evil, battles all the time. But maybe what we aren't focusing on here is the fact that when you're discussing the tangible impacts of an intangible event, you may not actually have proof that any of this is happening until something tangible happens and no one can figure out why, right? So we're going to talk about how the spirit of some things can actually touch down as a follow-up to one of my cartomancy videos. If you have seen this video already, you will appreciate this particular segment here. And if you haven't, you can feel free to go check it out, peruse through my YouTube videos. You can click on my channel button. It has that little pink rose, and you can see what I've already done before. Mind the video quality. It's not really my intention or something that I can control at this moment, as I require new hardware and the funds to fund that. So if you're interested in helping me, I do have a Cash App link where you can donate. I have a Patreon where you can subscribe per month to support me in my endeavors. I have a whole bunch of options. I have a merch store where you can purchase merch. And with 20 sales made per day, I'm able to donate to a cause that I really care about at healtrafficking.org. So check that out. And, hopefully I can keep that going for more than just one day. I'd like to continue that for a very long time to be able to donate something of a large amount to that particular agency for helping survivors of human trafficking. So to continue here, though, what we have is a threat model that involves very little, if any, evidence at all of what is actually happening to impact someone's odds of success, of freedom to choose, the dignities of risk that come inherently with being a human being. So when we are involved in a threat model, because there's a lot to this, I'm trying to cover this all in one video, we'll see how it goes. When you have a threat model that involves a lack of evidence, a lot of people will chalk it up to, well, this is a delusion. Well, have you ever heard of the saying Delulu is the Salulu? Because I ran across a YouTuber named Blue Phoenix who said that, and it made all the more sense to me than I think it ever should or had to anyone before, because when you get into intangible solutions for very tangible problems, you also get into the realm where you visit the idea, the concept, or whatever you would call it, of people trying to manifest real things by doing things that they think can't be traced back to them. Now, some of these things can be word of mouth, slander, things that impact a person's reputation, things that draw odds away from a person's success to bring it to them. But then there are also things that are very difficult to prove that involve very high skill sets that accomplish the same thing. So while a person can verbally slander someone with their own breath and manifest that in a tangible way, there are also tech attacks that are maybe lesser known about in their full scope of attack and their full scope of damage that operate the same way, just maybe not with your breath, but with your own hands typing the script, right? So the same way that someone could disparage someone from receiving a job opportunity by speaking ill about them and confirming with their employer that no, they're not a viable candidate, a person can actually do the same exact thing by typing up a script that removes a person's application from the notification stream. If they're applying for a job or whatever the case is, they could even be checking their own banking statements and finding that money's missing with no notification whatsoever that anything was transferred or otherwise removed. This is something that I researched in a paper that I'm still trying to track down. If you have a copy of the paper, or you're like one of those people that hides in the shadows of my videos and doesn't comment, but you have a copy of this, do me a favor and make a dummy account or whatever you do and post it as a comment below, because it's a PDF that actually uncovered how some of the most skilled bank robbers would create the heists successfully and walk away with a few $1,000s at a time to then smuggle to another bank account overseas by turning off notification systems when the money was transferred out. And they only removed as much as they felt they wouldn't get caught removing based on how much was already present in the account. So this is another thing that could be a type of spiritual or intangible attack that has real and tangible results. For example, if someone does that to you and snakes $100 from your account, not to disparage snakes here, snakes are healers, right? But if someone, kind of tugs $100 from your banking statement accounts and you're checking it in a live stream and you see $100 is suddenly missing and you can't account for where it went. There's no notification of a transfer, a payment, your statements aren't adding up. Any of these things could be happening and you would be none the wiser because you aren't on the back end or the server side that would be showing, did this notification during the transfer get turned off and who did it, right? It becomes like a mystery, like a whodunit. But this is something that doesn't actually have a tangible, physical thing that shows it's about to happen, which is what makes it intangible. It's the precursor to the attack landing that makes it intangible. And I talk about this in the book that I'm about to drop, but we'll get there, right? Another thing that I'd like to cover here is while skill sets like your intellect, your abilities, your comprehension of things can be abused this way when you are on the attacking side of someone and you are attacking them, there is a very serious backlash energetically that happens there because it's about detection, right? People really believe that the energy that they throw around intangibly does not land and impact them in such a way where it can all be traced back energetically to them. Now, some people would say, well, how do you trace something energetically when it's literally just a paper trail? It's just receipts of something. This is energy. Everybody thinks that energy is like this big hocus pocus thing that can never be resolved to something tangible as proof. But no, timestamps are proof. Evidence of something missing with screenshots before and after with accounting to prove something is missing is proof. People having residue of something that has been, I guess you could say, repeated as a result of something across separate, unbiased, but also, I guess you could say, community-wide comprehensions of something based in study is proof. Okay, I'll give you an example. This is another funny example I love to throw, right? If you have 4 separate psychics who are picking up on the same messages within 16 hours and none of them talk to each other, right? And they all have different abilities, they all have different talents, they all are made in their own special way, crafted by the events in their lives that shaped their experience, handcrafted to know what they know. by the experiences delegated to them by God, their path, whatever you want to call it, right? These people can all confirm the same thing or the same resonance of the messages, more or less, within the same day or two. A lot of people would say, oh, it could be a coincidence. It could also be that, they believe that they're reading each other's energy. It's not this. What it actually is the energy field that is holding this information is translatable to these people. They're not even talking to one another. They're literally stumbling upon each other more often than not after they have already intuited these things. And this resonance is a frequency. I spoke about this as well in some of the previous videos for the previous Threat Intel 102 series that I posted. Now, the quality was not so great. I apologize for that. It is Mercury retrograde. There are no guarantees on hardware cooperating with anything. Let's just bear with it until it's over. We have like a day and a half left. But with respect to the frequency that they're resonating on, they're able to retrieve these messages with ease. And they are all able separately in their own abilities to channel the same information. Now, these 4 people could also be picking up on the same smells, the same energetic interferences, the same weight of the situation, whatever it is that they translate into parsable and deliverable information is all able to be done this way. Now, this is something that could prove to be evidence. The reason being that if you have 4 unbiased parties delivering the same exact information without ever having spoken to one another, it's basically like having people who are unbiased on a jury, and it's a spiritual jury, creating their opinion of the final judgment. So it weighs in. What it is that it depends on a person's accuracy in the reading. It depends on how they have been able to unlock this information, where it comes from, what it is that they are able to reveal based on their own experience. This is what a lot of people consider to be a chosen path, because there are only so many things that you will be allowed to go through in life before it teaches you something that proves to be a key and a solution to someone else. This is important because these keys are what people seek when they are trying to decode the unknown. Now, what makes something stay unknown? Secrecy, obfuscation, hiding things in plain sight, deception. These are all tactics used in the dark arts. They're also used in mechanisms. Sorry, my hair's in my face. They're used in mechanisms that support theft, assumption of identities, things that actually spiritually identify categorically as possession. Possession meaning the overtaking of someone's vessel to assume the place of their rightful spirit being in that place, right? It's sort of like if you're sitting in a chair, someone tries to sit in that chair while you're sitting on it. That's a possession, right? So you have multiple tracks where all of these applications match up in any realm that they can be applied to. Spiritually, in the spirit of something, assuming someone else's identity. Mentally, someone stealing your ideas, your intellectual property. There are laws in place to protect this as well, right? Physically, if I said this already, I didn't. Okay, physically, where someone tangibly removes your assets from your control, but also intellectually, how they manage to remove what belongs to you from your possession. And a lot of people don't realize that the way that people are choosing to do this now has a very spiritual element of degradation to this, where a person's dignity of risk is removed from their possession in order for someone else to assume advocacy over what happens to their life. This is abusing the legal system to falsely imprison people through false reports, rooted in projection and possibly very serious mental illnesses that are not rightfully uncovered to protect innocent civilians. There are insurance policy fraud situations where people will open up insurance policies all across any state with someone else's name and then do their best in other states where this person is actually residing, unbeknownst to them that this is happening, for them to be unalived, so that this payout goes to someone who they never met. Okay? This is like a new age type of spiritual hunting mechanism. You know, this is not normal, but this is what we're dealing with, you know? And if you it's worse because like people don't always get proof that this is happening to them until it's already in progress. For example, I myself received a copy of an insurance policy that was opened in my name that I had nothing to do with. What were the odds of that? You can check it out on my blog at patreon.com/agofficial, right? Hashtag I want to say insurance policy. I received a copy of this policy that I wasn't supposed to receive. And I had no idea who opened it. When I called them, I couldn't even verify my own account. That's how I knew I didn't make it. Okay? So this issue here was that with everything else that was going on and leading up to this was never supposed to reach me, but I found out that someone was trying to engage in a relationship with me to assure that this would be successful. And where was that relationship? Out of state of my initial state of residence. To this day, no one had actually investigated it thoroughly to my knowledge. At least I received no report of this. But I will say to you, what is very important here to realize is that a lot of people have complained of this exact same thing. And some of their voices don't actually get to reach the public to warn them of these very real circumstances. And where does it start? In the spirit of the respect of human life, right? So you have people who perhaps are a bit more on the spiritual side, and then you have people who are a bit more on the technical side. But how many of them in a room, perhaps you're a bank management teller or something like this, and you run into a person who's a high-level spiritualist, a 33-degree Mason, what are the odds that you two are going to have a point of reference to talk about without someone like me bridging the gap? Like, hey, did you know, person who works at a bank, that people use your system to spiritually sacrifice people so that they lose all of their abilities to control their own assets through documentation fraud? And the bank person might be like, you know what? It's very interesting that you mentioned that because I didn't know it had a spiritual undertone to this. I didn't know that the spirit of someone's life was meant to be destroyed before someone went and stole their money, so that they had no way to recover it even through their own ambitions and self-worth, and so on and so forth. These are the types of things that need to be focused on, because a lot of people tend to speak against people's ability to talk about how these two things are in common with each other. They don't like to put the two halves together to say, oh wow, this is what people are doing. They like to say business is business and spirituality is spirituality. While that can be true, the separation of church and state, yes, that is viable. But lo and behold, wouldn't it make sense that something evil would take two things that are meant to stay separate to combine them into a newer problem, right? So where do we draw the line when it comes to how people do things to protect the spirit of what is sacred and to assure that people maintain that element of sacred reverence for the lives of all people? It's a very, very impactful way to approach things here. Now, mind you, my opinions and my posits here are my own. But if you would like to research more about spiritual practices and human sacrifice, which I personally would never recommend to anybody, I'm sorry. That's just, I don't believe that's how things should go. But historically, if you look into this, you will find that a lot of people had been sacrificed through other people's disparagement of their ideals first, and then corporally they were removed from the earth. Was it not one of the greatest philosophers of all time? I want to say it was Plato. Who was it, Plato or Socrates, who was poisoned for having an ability to dissect things in an intellectual way that uncovered how society's failing itself, right? Julius Caesar was stabbed by his own consorts. Jesus was crucified for people being jealous of his abilities, right? And then you have a whole bunch of leadership capabilities, and Martin Luther King John F. Kennedy. I mean, how many people do we have to really pull out of the roster for being some of the greatest people to have ever lived and then died because their spirit threatened evil agendas that were doing worse for the world long term? And that this should come to a stop is what upsets people, right? It's just fascinating to see that it's been a spiritual battle basically this entire time, and that only so many people are equipped to lead people through that. That it doesn't come down to magazine drama or the clothes that we wear or the things that we care about on a minute scale, but rather how it impacts everyone forever. This is where thought leadership takes a turn and goes into the right hands, because only so many people can actually talk about the real issues. And those people who are qualified, they're the ones stepping into their leadership roles now. Human sacrifice is something that was meant to remove impact on the part of good from the world. And it's being done in very creative ways now, digitally, really, so that no one can trace it. No one's hands look dirty enough in public until they're found out. And they're praying that those 15 years that might go by, might is the key word there, might save them a little bit of time to run away, but they won't. Because this is not the era for that, right? And for those people who practice traditional witchcraft, I know not all of you are malicious people. I know that you're not. But there are people who float around among you that you would never realize are protecting themselves so heavily because they are after you and they're afraid of what will happen if they're not successful. These are people who validate gun use but would simultaneously vouch for someone to kill themselves by depressing them repeatedly until they gave up on their life. Is this a future? I don't see this as a future. But these are leaders. These are people who are perfectly capable of leading you off a bridge based on where you place them. And this is important to recognize here, because some people don't want that for you. Me, I don't want that for you. But to wrap up this video, I would like to invite you to email me at my email address. If you would like to know more about this information, inquire about the classes that I teach about this, and talk a bit more about tangible and intangible attacks, the way that they meet, where they might meet, I'd be happy to help you understand more. And yeah, with that, this has been Tired Goth with Threat Intel 102. This is a new series that I've started. I hope it serves you well. And if you have any questions, comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I really like hearing from you all. I really like providing you with replies, especially if I feel good about your energy, I will definitely respond to you. And yeah, I mean, this is a new age, so let's protect it, right? Anyway, if you'd like to reach out to me, I'll leave some contact info. Check out my merch store. Check out the links in the description. I leave a description in each of these videos, and checking it out may actually bring me some blessings that I have been praying for myself. And if you like what I do, please reach out to me, contact me. I love hearing from my fans. Okay, so without further ado, this is Tired Goth. We are wrapping up the Threat Intel 102 series. Thank you for dropping by. Have a safe and wonderful week and a weekend as well if I don't see you until then. And I'm sure I will, but just in case. And yeah, stay tuned for more content. Love you guys.